Hello and welcome back. The Heron Outlet is here and we are ready to get started with Inter Miami's 2022 season. Game on Saturday. If you're listening, it's probably either Thursday or Friday, or maybe even Saturday morning leading up to the Chicago Fire match at Drive Pink Stadium. We are extremely excited. I know you guys are probably extremely excited as well. It's been a while, but we're here. We will be consistent throughout the season, so all the Heron Outlet content is coming. But we're here to talk about everything that's gone on in the preseason. We'll be giving our season previews. We're going to be talking about the newly unveiled Inter Miami CF2 team. We'll go in depth into the Chicago match and everything that's just gone on the last couple of weeks, and it has been a lot. Alex and Ian are here. Welcome in, guys. Let's start with the big one. Inter Miami's first ever trophy. Inter Miami's first ever thing that they can claim, which is huge. The Breezeway Airlines Carolina Challenge Cup champions, Inter Miami CF. They're going to get their name on the trophy. We're going to be doing an overall review of the tournament, of the 3 games that Miami played. 0 losses, which is huge. But let's get into it. Ian and Alex, you guys got to watch a ton of the games, all of them. What were your overall takeaways? We'll go in depth to some of the games. What were your overall takeaways of the matches? And what did you see? What did you like? What did you not like? And what can we see translate into the regular season?
So the first thing that I want to talk about is this does count as a trophy. I know we can joke about it, we can laugh about it because it is a preseason trophy. But in England, if you wind up, winning the FA Cup and winning the Premier League, you play for the FA Trophy, right? Like you play for the Community Shield and you count that as a trophy. So I know that it's a little tongue in cheek and a little silly, but it does count as a trophy. The thing that I want to start with on the field is how clear and consistent the style of play was. It was very apparent from the first ball kicked off to the end of the 3 games how the style of play is going to look. And I know we'll get into it in a sec, but I liked the consistency of play. A lot of the time last year, and even under Diego Alonso the year before, the thing that we were complaining a lot about was the tinkering, the moving parts. This seemed it didn't matter who was starting, it was the same consistent style. And that was the thing that I really enjoyed.
Don't get too much into it now, Ian, but we just got off a press conference, or you just came back from a press conference with Phil Neville, and one of his big quotes of the day was, "This is my team. These are my players. I have to live and die by them." Do you think that has to play a part in it?
I think that he wants to prove himself. I think that he wants ownership over this. And if the team fails, he will, rightfully so, admit it. But I asked him point blank about preseason preview. We'll get there later in the show. But he said, I like the fact that everybody's underestimating us. I like the fact that they're putting us under the radar, because when we exceed expectations, I get to turn around and go, "Told you so. We were better than you thought." And I think that there is a chip on his shoulder to prove that this team is better than what a lot of people think. Because let's be honest, there's a lot of unknowns with this team. This is a roster rebuild like we've never seen in MLS history. How many new players are in, how many young players are in, how many unknowns there are. We've never really seen a roster rebuild in one season the way that we've seen with this.
Alex, let's turn it over to you. Give me your overall review of this, and I know that you're almost the tactical mastermind here. What did you see on the field that Ian was talking about in this consistency? What was Phil Neville employing with this team, and how was it going forward, and why was it so successful? And they lifted the trophy, so it had to have been successful, right?
Yeah, I think this year's Inter Miami, they come in with a clear tactical style, and we haven't been able to say that in their entire existence. So just to, as a bit of a soccer nerd, just to be able to break them down in a way that's competent and aesthetically pleasing to the eye, it's going to be really fun. But yeah, during the cup, they stayed in the back 3. I know there have been people and writers and fans that want to stick with the back 4 because I guess they're football purists, and most football teams use a back 4, but this back 3 is working for the what's that word? The type of player that's on this roster. There's a bunch of wingers, there's a bunch of fullbacks, there's a bunch of center backs. So naturally, when you have that many center backs on the team, you don't use it for a flat back four. So, looking at it tactically, it's typical 3-4-3, 3-5-2, but a little tweaked. I think when you see teams play that formation, it's usually defend and counter, which Inter Miami did do at times during the Challenge Cup. You take a look at Ariel Lassiter's goal against Columbus. It came from not really a counter, but sort of quick short passes through the midfield that had Columbus on the back foot, so they're able to counter quickly. It's sort of a possession base. Never wants to play with more of the ball, but I think that once this team gets a bit more settled, I think once you know they start feeling each other out in terms of the position and how the other players play style are, I think it's going to move a lot quicker and maybe be a counter-attacking side, but I think not so much countering with long balls but more short quick passes, get him into the wing backs, let the midfielders control the tempo a bit. And if you look at back at Jean Mata's gorgeous entry pass to Noah Allen for that goal against Charlotte, I believe. Yeah, I think that's what they want. They want to hit the opponent on the counter, get them on the back foot, just go as quickly through the wings as possible and to wreak havoc. And it's going to be super super interesting because they've got the players to do this now. Last season when they reverted to a back three. I was actually thinking about that DC United game, I believe in June, where they switched to a back three and they got I think they got whopped like by 3 goals. And yeah, it was just a mess because they weren't tactically or personnel wise prepared for it. But this season, like you said, Austin, Neville said this is his team. Him and Chris Anderson specifically brought in players to play this style. So it's going to be super interesting, and I'm excited to cover and break it down throughout the season.
Austin, I just want to touch to Alex's point there because I was looking it up as she was making the point. When they played that style, the style that they came out with in Challenge Cup, Carolina Challenge Cup, they were 7-2-6 last year, which would have netted them fifth or sixth in the Eastern Conference, depending on points per game. When they played the back four like they did, they were 5-3-11. And so you can see the staunch contrast in the style of play and it working. So when they played that style last year, I think that they saw, okay, if we go a whole year feeling comfortable in this style of play, running this system with the players that we know can run this system, it was average when we didn't have the players that we liked, right? If we have now the players that we like to run the same system, it can improve.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the game that you were talking about, Alex, when they first did it was the Montreal game. And it was earlier on in the season, and there were 2 mistakes at the back, defenders being caught out in positions where they thought they maybe would be covered. And there just wasn't that understanding in the back three with those 3 center backs. And now the fact that they're getting it done, 6 to 4 weeks within preseason, going into it, everyone has the idea this is going to be a back three and not a back four. It seems like it's going to be a lot better. It's something that Phil Neville wants to do, and that wasn't what he wanted to do when he came in 2021. He seemed like a 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3 guy, but with the roster that he's built and he's continuing to build and the players that he wants, I think he's fully shifted his mindset into a back three, and it's looking like potentially a McVay, Lowe, Quinteros back three to start the season, but we're still trying to figure that out, unfortunately. And we all wish the best for this guy. Ian Frey went out with a terrible ACL injury yet again, 2 preseasons in a row. He will be missing the 2022 season, and it's kind of going to help me jump into my point of standout players in preseason, because I wanted to ask you guys about that. For me, it was Ian Frey. Ian Frey to me was not by far Inter Miami's best player, but he was the most exciting prospect that I saw on the field in preseason. And it's so unfortunate to see this injury happen to him again. We wish Ian, if you're listening or if anybody's listening, all the best. I hope you recover even stronger than you did before and can come back to be the player that you're supposed to be. You seem like, I mean, we talked about it. You can go on the YouTube channel and, the DC United game, I think, is where we raved about him and how good he was on the ball defensively, coming back for recoveries, beating players one on one. He scored the goal against the Peruvian side. There was so much to like about Ian's game,
And
and we wish we could have saw him.
Phil talked about the that Peruvian side giving them the confidence, and his play in particular giving them the confidence to do what they did in the Carolina Challenge Cup. So I think that that game really sparked how this team is feeling heading into the year.
Yeah, I wouldn't take preseason lightly. It's very important, and Phil Neville's really happy that they got to have the preseason that they did because they've not had that in the club's history. Not when Phil Neville was there, not when Alonso was there, but right now they've got a full preseason, and hopefully that under their belt is going to help them. Let me get your guys's. We'll start with you, Alex. Your standout players, not only in the Carolina Challenge Cup and preseason so far, who you're looking forward to the most. I think I can guess one of yours at least, but I won't even say it. Just go on and let me know who it is.
Noah Allen, for sure, is one of them. I wrote about it in a recent article I did. Noah Allen definitely stood out. One of the younger players, probably the youngest player on. Well, we'll explain it later, but he'll be called up back and forth because of MLS Next PRO. But one of the youngest players on the roster did super well. I believe he started all 3 games. I gotta double check that, but he did play a significant amount during the Carolina Challenge Cup and throughout preseason. He stood out. Honestly, in my opinion, he is almost ready. At least to start off on the bench, maybe get some minutes. That way, I think what with his age and technical ability and speed and surprisingly physicality. He was playing against Charlotte. Bossing some of these grown men around. Outrunning them. So seeing an academy product, go out and play against MLS sides and do well. Bodes well as for his future. I know we interviewed Noah a couple of months ago, and he was. I think we touched on his career and his career growth, and he just said he just wants to keep his head down and keep growing, and he's doing exactly that. So I'm super excited to see him. Like I said, we'll touch on MLS Next Pro and their ability to move players back and forth, but Noah Allen was one of them. Ariel Lassiter was another one of them. I know when Miami made that trade, people weren't, mainly Houston Dynamo fans, they weren't ecstatic, because I don't know, he didn't get much playing time, but you see with his pace and his physicality and his ability to get in behind, he's going to be such a valuable asset to this Inter Miami side that have been super slow these past 2 years. With some of these aging players and bringing in a guy like Lassiter who has South Florida ties. His dad Roy played for the Miami Fusion, so bringing in a guy like Lassiter, it's not only a good roster move, but there's some history behind him too. And I will say that even though uh DeAndre Edlin would be my third player. He just got here recently, but he looked super up to par. He looked fit. Like I believe it was during the Charlotte game. It was the 70th minute and or 78th minute, and the guy made like a 30-yard sprint to go after a ball that should have went out of bounds, but he went there and saved it. And it's just incredible the amount of passion and drive that and work rate that this guy has, and the fact that he's able to come from Turkey, get here in Miami, and maybe and plug in straight away. It just shows his professionalism and his willingness to just help Inter Miami. Really, he signed a 4-year contract with an option for a fifth. He's here for the long haul. So those would be my 3 guys. And I will say Gonzalo Higuain did look fit. um I'll touch on McVeigh, Lowe, Quinteros. They did a solid job. Yeah, there were a lot of good players during preseason, but those 3, Lassiter, Allen, and Yedlin, would be my 3.
I'll try and switch it up a little. Campagna is an interesting. I want to see if he is a straight up 9, how he has to work with Higuain, if Higuain needs to take more of that 10 role and that drop back. There's still some questions there, but I like what it's up top. I guess I'll sort of go front to back. In the midfield, that partnership between Gregory and Jean Mota is going to be so important. Everything is going to flow through that spine. And so I like their dynamic, their communication, their comfortability with each other. Gregory even just talked about it. in the press conference about how they are feeling each other very well. Their playing styles very comparable. I like that. And then just moving back down the spine, you mentioned it briefly there, Alex. Damian Lowe. I want to see his expressiveness, how he is able to be that authority figure to when times get tough. How is he going to be able to say, no, 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 this is our way. This is the way. He'll be the Mandalorian, right? Like that he will be the one in control and be the one that needs to express to the team, we need to keep our structure, we need to keep our shape, we need to keep playing our style, and not to do some of the panicky things that we've seen in the past.
Those are some good names, Alex. If you were wondering, Lassiter was the one I was hoping you would go with. I should have known Noah Allen as well because he did play phenomenal throughout the tournament. He got a lot of minutes, and I think even Christopher McVay talked about him in the media scrum and how good Allen was, the connection that they've had in short little time, his understanding of the game at such a young age. So all praise to Noah Allen, and as you briefly mentioned, as we will talk about later, seems like Allen might have a real shot to play first team minutes this year, even though not named to the first team roster at the moment. But those are some good picks. Let's get into the back line, though. I did mention Ian Frey going down with an ACL injury. Inter Miami took Ryan Saylor in the first round of the MLS Super Draft this year. It was not signed until yesterday, about a week following the Ian Frey news. And 4 days before match day, yesterday, as in Wednesday, I believe. So Ryan Saylor is on the team. It's just adding depth to this back line, in my opinion. I think that when you look at the center backs that are on this roster, you have your potential three starters in Damian Lowe, Christopher McVay, and Jairo Quinteros, and then Mabika possibly getting minutes to start as well. And then without Ian Frey, you don't have that extra number, that extra body behind those four guys. Ryan Saylor is there to be that man. I don't think that there's anyone right now other than possibly Ethan Harden, who may be just a little too young and inexperienced at the moment to be brought up. I think Ryan Saylor at 4 years old is the smart choice. I'm sure he's been training with the team all throughout after the draft process. Your thoughts on the signing, and what Ryan Saylor, I mean, it's not a young draftee prospect, right? He's 24. He's definitely matured, but there were times where we've seen this in MLS draft history where it doesn't seem like NCAA players, when you talk about, their age compared to other ages of, let's say, academy kids, they could still be in the same, mature mental state at 24 and 17 in terms of on the soccer pitch. Do you see any of that from Ryan Saylor, and what do you think his role is going into 2022?
I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head with that the head on the nail. I don't know how the saying goes, but whatever. But I think with Ryan Saylor, they learned their lesson from Abika, and that really there is some like residual effect there that when the dog days of summer happened last year, they didn't have that option, and now they wanted that flexibility, and that there is a clear connection point from those two deals. I think when it comes to Saylor, I mean, let's be honest. If he gets 200, 300 minutes this year and they're quality minutes, that's a nice season for him. They're not asking him to go out here and do 1,000. They're asking him to be a quality body in the training ground, a quality, for some of the younger guys, even though he's a first time professional, like you said, he's 24 years old already. So maybe with some of those 17, 16, 18-year-olds that they have, to be able to say, hey, this is the process that you're going to go through. I went through this in college. You can go through this here in our academy as well. So if he can do those things, it's a great signing. The club retains options year after year after year. I texted you, Austin. It's the Josh Penn effect. So if it doesn't work out, then no harm, no foul. But I think that's the expectation: be a quality member of the team, help in training, and if you can get a couple hundred minutes that are quality, not don't be doing mistakes on the field. But if you can get a couple hundred quality minutes, I think that's fine, and that's all they're really asking of him.
Yeah, and Sailor was a quality college center back too. He played for the University of Washington. Chris Henderson. He's familiar around those parts. So Yeah, he's a squad rotation player, but he during his post draft interview, I remember sitting here listening to him, and he was very hell bent on fighting for a starting spot. So, if God forbid, there is a another injury crisis, Ryan Saylor, he seems very prepared to go in and step in and do the job. So it was a smart signing, but it's unfortunate Ian Frey went down, but Ryan Saylor is a very capable player as well. So I'm looking forward to
And
seeing him
yeah,
on
I'll
that
bring
pitch.
up
Yeah.
again the contract is good, so
Hmm.
it's low risk, high reward right now, and especially the team can cut ties if it doesn't work out. So it's a very team friendly contract. So I don't think that there's a lot to be concerned with there. I think it can only be a positive at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Speaking of cutting ties, let's just get right into it. It was officially announced by Phil Neville today. The words came straight from his mouth. Blaise Matuidi is not on Inter Miami's roster, and he will not be on. I think the deadline is Friday, the 25th, for the first roster. Matuidi won't be there. I don't know how much time we need to spend on this, but your guys' initial thoughts, your reaction, and what does this mean for Inter Miami? Ian, I'll let you get into the roster side of it. Opening up a DP slot, they've got some of the U22 guys in now. Alex, I do want to throw it to you because you were the Matuidi person throughout the last couple of seasons. Um, not in a the regressing form of it anyway. Your thoughts on Matuidi officially not being on this roster? It's been a long time coming. We knew this was going to happen, but now that Phil Neville has said it's official, your initial thoughts?
Oh, Lord. Blaze, he came with pedigree and World Cup winner and Juventus and Paris Saint Germain and all those good clubs. But yeah, it was just time to go. Honestly, I've talked about him and written about him, and it was just a bad contract. Honestly, nothing personal against him. It was just the right fit. It wasn't the right fit, really. I'm sure depends on what happens tomorrow. If he goes to another team and plays well, then good for him. But at Miami, it just wasn't the right fit, really. Looking at look at Pizarro, it just wasn't the right fit. So yeah, it's unfortunate because his signing was met. It was the cause of all this controversy. So for him to leave, it's uh, sort of in a way like Miami kind of closing the chapter on their first 2 years in the league. Once the Matuidi, who was the cause of the sanctions and whatnot, he leaves the club, and honestly, it's as if Miami's turning a new leaf. So I wish him the best. Neville said he wishes him the best. He did confirm that he won't be returning to the team. So yeah, it was just a bad signing, bad just bad all around. So on the upside, Miami do have an open DP spot now, so that's a good thing. But yeah, it was just a bad signing, and letting him go, it frees up a lot of money and a DP spot. So I'm sure Miami will definitely use that wisely this time compared to their other DP signings. So
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily clear up a lot of money. One of the words that Phil used that I found very interesting was that he cleared waivers,
mm,
which says that they did not find a suitor for him. It
hmm
means that he is still sort of in the system. So they will be responsible for that money. That was a very difficult contract that they were burdened with. Especially given his performance, but even outside of his performance, even if he was at a high level, that was still a really difficult contract to have on the books. And when you combine that with the sanctions that he also caused, like that his contract also caused, there is a lot there that will be very difficult to deal with for many years to come. We just sort of have to understand the reality of the situation and know that there's just going to be that pain and we're going to feel it for the next 2 to 3 years, probably about 2 years.
yeah,
Um,
but I will say
yeah,
too that
yeah,
this season, like this off season, I would say Henderson, they handled it I think better than any of us expected. They got rid of a lot of contracts and
Well,
just to
and the fact
alleviate some
that
of that
the
pressure.
fact that the fact that they're trading Tam and Gam for international roster slots now just shows the fact that they're willing to give that money away just shows how they
Yeah.
have had the forethought to be able to do that. Sorry, Alex, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah, it's a big one. I mean, and I'm not exactly sure. I mean, they do have to take care of the money in off of waivers, but just you're not gonna have to tell me here. I'm a little ignorant to this. If he goes through waivers and completely fills out the process, they still owe him the money. But is the money affecting them on the books for this season?
Um, it's complicated. There are ways around it that they can maneuver. That it won't be the full like. I mean, what was he on? 4.7 mil? Was it 4.7 that I think that he was owed?
I'd have to
He
double
was on
check,
a two
but
and a half year deal.
But of course it was only the. I was sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
But
no,
of
no, no.
course
I'm
the
just saying.
only the 612,500, whatever that crazy number is the one that's affected towards the cap. That's the number that
Correct.
I think is more important than the other numbers.
Well, but
Is
you have
that number affected at all or taken off the books?
no, that'll be off, but you have to understand that now that if
Okay.
they want to go out and they want to get another designated player, how much is I mean, let's be honest, these owners have been willing to pony up the cash all the time,
Yeah.
this whole
Yeah.
time. So I don't really necessarily say this, but I don't like to also assume other people's finances. If they don't want to pay that money, it's not my money. So like that, like it is still millions of dollars that you're responsible for. So it's not nothing. They will have that open designated player spot. Once the loan from Pizarro ends, they will also have the designated player spot open, so potentially two there. And Higuain is nearing sort of the twilight there, so we could see a lot of big investment and a lot of big movement. I would say in like the 2 to 3 year span. I don't know if we'll see it necessarily yet, but that's just me postulating with and assuming. And I think that definitely over the summer you could see one of those 2.5 year deals that we saw like with Matuidi for to fill the designated player spot in July. There's a lot of talk of certain players. We don't have to get into it now, but I think that it opens up the slot. It opens up more flexibility, but you're also doing that by taking the financial hit to waive the player instead of sell the player or loan the player on, like they did with LGP, Figal, Pizarro, Morgan, that they got something for. You're getting nothing here. You're just eating the cost.
And you made a good point that I just now kind of clicked in my head. The loans that were placed on the guys like LGP and Pizarro were pretty strategically placed, as in I'm pretty sure the loans go to the ends of their deals with Inter Miami, and then that's what's kind of like freeing it up. Exactly. So that makes a lot of sense. They
They
weren't able
did
to
the same
accomplish
thing with
something
Pellegrini. It was the same thing with
with
Pellegrini. Yeah.
Right. So there's that aspect to it. And another player they got, I guess, something back for was Julian Carranza in a second round draft pick. I mean, there's a couple of things there that Chris Henderson has had to maneuver and like had to maneuver and do
So
that has worked out in Miami's favor.
just to that point, to wrap it up, there's a there are different tentacles to this, right? You can sell the player like they did with Figal, or you can
Right.
trade the players like they did with Morgan and Carranza. You can loan the players like they did with LGP and Pizarro,
Pizarro.
or you can just do what they had to do with Matuidi because they could not find a suitor for him and just eat that waiver cost, which is what they're now announcing that they're doing today.
And I want to get the total numbers for the contracts on all those players. Maybe we can do it towards the end here. But that was a lot of big name players. Alex, you got one thing here. Let me turn it over to you. Final thoughts on this whole Matuidi
I
thing.
think the most exciting thing about this is that we're in a World Cup year, and every World Cup there's always one or two of the stars from that tournament that make the move to MLS because maybe they just want to move clubs or whatnot. So realistically, I know this World Cup will be held in sort of the fall winter months this year. That coincides with the MLS roster window opening. So realistically, if Miami plays their cards right and maybe they're not struggling too bad during the summer, they can hold on to that DP spot till the World Cup. See, maybe go gallery shopping. I don't know. And if there's any player that interests them or stands out during that tournament, maybe they could make them an offer. It's just yeah, I think it's just crazy to think about. But every year, there's always a player that moves after a World Cup. So Miami could be one of those teams this year.
Something interesting too about not even just trying to get players in terms of a World Cup year, but the players that are on the roster right now that are trying to fight for World Cup spots are gonna. It's just added motivation. The two that I can name specifically, I would say Jairo Quinteros, but I don't think obviously Bolivia are not going to qualify. But DeAndre Yedlin with the U.S. men's national team and Leonardo Campana with Ecuador. Those are two guys who have been consistent in their international squads going into a World Cup year. The last couple of weeks of qualifying, this is time for the players to show out. This is time for the players to do everything they can on the pitch at any point, whether it's for club or country, to get into that final, I think, 23, 25-man roster come November. So that's added motivation for players that are already on the team, which I think is also a component to look out for. Speaking of players on the team, we're in an official game week, guys. This is it. We're 2 days removed from the home opener. Finally, it is here. Let's do what we would normally do in a game week and give a little bit of a roster update. Training yesterday, I got to go out there. Luckily, I feel always so blessed to do those kinds of things. By the way, but I got to go out there, and Breck Shea and Mo Adams did return to training. There was no sight of Victor Ulloa or Robbie Robinson. I can say that I did see Nick Marsman out there training. However, I think Phil Neville said today that that Nick Marsman is ahead of schedule, but his schedule is pushed back a lot more than was originally thought. Now, it was never said what his schedule was, but I thought that I'm pretty sure there was a common understanding that he could potentially be here for the opener. He won't be, and he probably won't be available for the first 3 to 4 games, pushing his first start for Miami this season probably until April, maybe middle of April. It's going to be a while till we see Nick Marsman, but I do think that the signing of Clement Diop was very telling, and he's going to be the starter for the game against Chicago. So there's a couple of fitness issues within the team. However, other than that, I think there might be something going on with Gibbs. I'm not totally sure. We do need to talk about the left side of the pitch and what Miami want to do. But any updates that you guys have, or any thoughts on the injury updates and how it's going to affect the team going into this match week?
So yeah, Phil did say that it would be a miracle for him to play through March. So I'm not expecting him, in the opener or any of the first couple of weeks. If he gets back in, I don't know, the Ides of March, if you will, then maybe. But Diop played well, right? Like outside of that silly last goal against Charlotte, Diop has had a really good preseason. He only gave up one goal. He's made some nice saves. He's clearly experienced. Clearly has the communicative. If you step 2 feet on that training ground, you hear him. I mean, he's all over the place on that. So I feel like they're in good hands with him. Should Marsman need a little more time, and they've been very adamant that they're going to give him the time needed. This is one of those injuries that you don't want to rush back from. So they're going to give him that space to be able to make sure that he is 100% and not coming back even at 95 or 90%. So I think that we can touch on that there. The one thing that I really am curious about is, and I touched on it when you asked for who impressed me in preseason, when we talked about that style of Higuain running sort of that, I don't even want to call it a false 10, but being able to be a second striker, sort of, as it is. Who's the fifth guy in the midfield, right? So if it's a 3-5-2, then quote unquote, then we have the 2 wing backs. We have Mota and we have Gregory in the midfield. Who's that fifth person? Especially if Ulloa can't go, especially if Robbie can't go. Where are you looking to find it They've been tinkering with that, but who is that person and what is that role? That's my biggest question right now.
I'll take a shot at answering this. I think probably George Acosta. Honestly, he looked really good throughout preseason. He looked fit, comfortable. We saw him last year for Fort Lauderdale CF, now named Inter Miami 2. During the USL season, we spoke to Darren Powell about him and Acosta's recovery from his knee injury. He's bounced back super well. Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if he's a starter come Saturday. I know Mo Adams is working his way back from injury. He's nearly fully fit now, so having a guy like Acosta who is probably a bit more creative than I say Mata. Not that Mata isn't a creative midfielder. Obviously, we saw that with that gorgeous goal, that entry pass to Noah Allen during the Charlotte game. But having that good midfield trio balance of I know this is so like FIFA stereotypical, but Destroyer and Gregory, a box to box guy like Mata, and then you have that third creative midfielder and George Acosta. That would give the midfield a really nice balance since the 3-4 3-5-2 isn't you know it doesn't have a typical creative 10 in that typical 10 in the middle of the pitch spot. I know Gonzalo will probably play that role, but getting a guy in like George Acosta who is definitely more creative. He has been working on the defensive side of the ball. He's not afraid to put in a tackle anymore, which is great to see. Knee injuries can be really tricky, so for him to just be flying in the tackles, I think it was against DC where I don't know. There was some instance where he had to recover a ball and he just flew into a tackle, and I was like, okay, yeah, he feels confident now. So, yeah, I'm really high on George, and I'm excited to see him. But I think he'll probably get the start. If it's not him, it'll probably be Mo Adams. Mo Adams is equally as good. He's I don't want to say box to box, but he can be tricky. He like, how do I explain this? His movement is impeccable. He will just move into pockets of space to open up space for other teammates. I know this is soccer 101, but it's just really it's nice to see after years of having midfield players that didn't necessarily do that. So Mo Adams, super intelligent guy, super physical, really nice on the ball. So it's really nice to see Miami with some midfield options after the years that they have. And yeah, and it's just nice to see. And maybe I'll throw in a Robert Taylor in there. I know he's more of a natural winger, but he can play as a central midfielder 10. And I know this morning Neville mentioned that he's only had a couple of training sessions, so he needs to get up to speed. But yeah, a bevy of riches, I would say, in midfield for Inter Miami, and it's nice to see. It's nice to see, but yeah, I think Acosta will be that guy.
I I wish I could say the same because I like George Acosta um, a lot, actually. I think that he would provide an attacking output for other players that would be really good. However, I don't see Phil Neville ditching Emerson or Lassiter on the pitch to start a game. Like, and I know that there's this, we're going back and forth between 3-4-3 and 3-4-3 and 3-5-2. I actually don't care how it goes out on paper 45 minutes before kickoff. I think that there is going to be a 4-man midfield with 3 people in the front. However, wherever Higuain plays, it'll be under Campana, and Lassiter or Emerson could be on the right, could be on the left. But as Campana is playing as that true number 9 threat, Lassiter or Emerson are the in behind, get through the center back threat and try and have Higuain ping a ball through. Just how I'm pretty sure they scored a goal just like that in preseason, and that's kind of what it's going to be fluid up there, I think, and it'll be fluid in the midfield with Higuain. And I don't know if he's going to go with a third midfielder. I think maybe I would prefer that, but I'm still tossing the ideas back and forth. If it's Mo Adams, I think that kind of shows a more defensive tone. But if he goes with this winger who's a deep ball threat or just a piercing ball threat to get in between defenders and behind center backs, then it shows more of this counter-attacking approach that we want to see from them and that we saw so much. This Route 1 soccer, pinging balls forward and putting pressure on the defenses. That is something that I personally think I would want to see.
I think it's going to look weird. I don't think that we're going to be accustomed to how it's going to look. We talked so much last year about how the goal, and we talked about this like previously, is that the goal was to angle the field, right? To turn it on a pivot and play that ball so that you could get in, right? So we were talking about that angling. I think here that roaming winger, maybe, and then with Higuain, maybe wherever he might go, like it's gonna look a little weird, but that's part of the plan. That like you always know Mota and Gregory are gonna be in the middle. You always know you're gonna have your wing backs, whether it's Yedlin, whether it's Gibbs. You always know you're gonna have your three at the back. You always know you're gonna have Campana up top. And then those other two, Higuain, Rivaldo, Ariel Lassiter, they're the chaos, and that's what's going to make it look weird. I think that that's a cool strategy, especially because I mean I've been blown away. I knew Ariel Lassiter was fast. I didn't know he was that fast, and so like the just sheer speed allows you to get wide in and out so quickly that it's really like almost a circus to watch. He can cause a lot of problems without even intending to cause a lot of problems simply because he's so quick. And that's what makes me think that he brings an exciting option. But I also think that Rivaldo is a very similar player, not as fast, but very technical, more technical than Ariel Lassiter is. So I think that both of them create a little options. I'm interested, Alex, why Mo Adams would fit in that. Like that he seems like sort of like a substitute for Mota type to me, right off the bat, I guess, and like trying to fit in that role.
Yeah, I think well the inclusion of Mo Adams was solely based off of, player availability. I think he will be that guy that sometimes starts, sometimes he is on the bench and whatnot. But yeah, going back to the formation, I was tinkering with my little tactical lineup thing here. I said the three
You
five
love that
two.
thing. You
Yeah,
love
it's
that
really
thing.
it's super convenient. Yeah, I want it on my laptop, but yeah, I was tinkering with it, and I said the 3-5-2 solely because I believe Chicago play a 4-2-3-1, and making up numbers in the midfield would just make the most sense. I don't know. I will just write an article, but I think making up that middle three combined with their double pivot would outnumber them in midfield, and that would give Miami more of an advantage. Um, just to get to play those diagonal balls through the wings. Look at the Columbus game during preseason. I believe they started in a 4-2-3-1 before they switched to a 4-3-3. Columbus wasn't really threatening at all. They barely had a shot on target. So I think if Miami's able to control that middle and hit them, especially if Higuain drops a bit deeper, that could be four Inter Miami players in midfield, and then the wingbacks can provide that with, and it'll play really sort of like a counter-attacking team. But I think especially if Shaqiri starts, he's going to be that more creative type of a midfielder who wants to play those through balls in behind. If you outnumber them in midfield and you get someone to man mark Shaqiri, which will probably be a Gregory, and Higuain drops deep, you will have Mota and whoever starts alongside him, alongside Higuain being that three. Campana can stay up top. He's a big guy. He can play with his back to goal. He's good with his feet. And then you get, I don't know who starts on the left in behind, and you get Yedlin with his pace in behind. Let's say Shaqiri's dribbling. Gregory's able to nick the ball off him. You pass it to a guy like John Mata, who has really good passing range, or Higuain picks it up. All you do is need to ping it forward to an overlapping Yedlin. Campana will be there in the box, and then you just, off to the races. So, yeah, that's my tactical brain. But yeah, I think it'll probably make the most sense. Like I said, they could play start Emerson. I liked what I saw from him. In preseason, is a super technical player. At one point, I believe he was like dribbling through like two Charlotte FC defenders. It was absolutely crazy. But yeah, it's just the fact that we're discussing who can start compared to last season. It just shows the amount of work that Neville and Henderson did this offseason. So it's just an abundance of riches right now, and it's just super cool to see. And yeah, it'll definitely be an intriguing starting 11 this Saturday. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I wanted to get into I guess our ideal starting lineups, but then also at the same time, going through the MLS season, every team is just so completely different, and so I want to bring up this quick topic here, like throughout the last two seasons, Inter Miami have had to adapt, and they've, like you said in the beginning of the show, Ian, they haven't had their own style or their consistent style. They haven't had their own consistent style that other teams necessarily had to plan for. I think that Phil Neville is trying to be a team to plan against. But when you look at a team like Chicago, which also is facing uncertainty, and their main certainty right now is probably Xherdan Shaqiri, and I guess they got Kasper Shabalko, if I'm not mistaken. There are a couple of really good players for Chicago on the attacking front. Does a midfield three, set better in terms of numbers rather than playing a guy like Emerson or Ariel Lassiter? For me personally, I think that if you want to go out and win this game, especially at home, there's too much technical ability and pace between those two guys that I just named to not have one of them on the field at all times. I think that we have discussed the possibility of Lassiter being this super sub 60, 65 minutes in. If you've got everything out of Emerson that you possibly could have, there's just another component for you to use on the bench to get in behind tired defenders. It's kind of a toss up for me, but I would lean towards having one of these quick guys on the field rather than stacking up numbers to try and play against Shaqiri. However, maybe I'll be completely blown away by what Shaqiri can do on the field, and he'll just use his left foot in godly like form and dribble around everybody and do whatever. But I'm personally hoping that Phil Neville is truly, like I think he said today, that they're focusing on themselves, they're focusing on their style of play. They want to be a team to plan against and not necessarily be a team that has to plan for all the time.
Well, and the thing that I liked what Phil said this morning was that he always talks, he has this phrase that Inter Miami is a club like no other. And he was sort of asked to define what he meant by that, because he says this phrase again and again. And I like the idea of what his definition was, that it is a club, but it's not just a club. It's sort of like a way of life. It's not just a brand. It's not just a kit that the pink kits that they have. It's not just the different colors that they have. It's not just the Miami culture. It's La Familia. It's all of these things come together, and you can say that other clubs have it, and other clubs do have it in MLS, right? Portland, Seattle, New York City did a good job with it last year on their run. There are clubs that have it, but with Inter Miami, it's a little more ingrained into the Americas, the Europeans, the North Americans, the Caribbean. Like there is a global aspect to it that they want to play. You can't just be the Netherlands and play total 11. You can't be a Brazil that plays tiki taka. You sort of have to have this hodgepodge style that is so fun and so unique and so uniquely Miami. And I think that is what he's talking about when he says that.
Yeah, and I think yeah, and this season we'll see a lot of that. This roster's super multicultural as well, and they come from different backgrounds, and they'll bring different playing styles. So it'll be interesting to see, and I'm just looking forward to it. Cautiously optimistic because this is obviously a new team. They won't be flying right out of the gate, but we will see a significantly better style of play, attitude, kits as well. I wasn't too big of a fan of those Heron white kits, but yeah, it'll be a good season, and of course the younger players coming through MLS Next Pro. So yeah, it'll be a good season and interesting season to say the least.
I
There it
mean,
is. My next point. Oh, go ahead, Ian.
like
Sorry.
no, but like a Finnish guy, a couple of Brazilians, and the sons of Phil Neville, Roy Lassiter, and David Beckham walk into a bar. I
You
mean,
got a
like
swing
the
too.
idea
Good
of
thing.
all of everything that these people have, it is so global. This team is so global that it really bears fruit.
Yeah, yeah, I love it though. It's interesting.
Well,
Yeah,
some of them
it's
can't
gonna
walk
be
into a bar because they're not of age.
they're too
That's
young. Good
true.
point. Good point. Well, at least in America
Yeah,
anyway. In
true,
America
true.
anyway.
Uh,
But Alex, you did bring up what I wanted to talk about next before we go into a little game that we have courtesy of Extra Time that have a little format that we're going to talk about as our season preview. MLS Next Pro, I guess better late than never, have finally announced how the season is going to work, and with that, Inter Miami announced that Fort Lauderdale CF is no longer, and it is now Inter Miami CF2. And I personally love the Fort Lauderdale name just because I'm a Broward County guy. But Inter Miami CF2 is another global branding thing that is just for Inter Miami, which makes more sense than I could think of. But anyway, there are some very interesting things that we can look at here. Not only is the scheduling out, and I'm pretty sure you can see whoever Miami is going to play and how it's going to work. There's conferences. There is obviously there's divisions too with inside of the conferences. The way the playoffs are going to work and everything like that. But the biggest news of it all is that the team, the first 15 players have been announced. Inter Miami CF2 have their roster, and I'm just going to go through it extremely quickly. Name the names. You're going to probably have heard all of them. We've talked about them, especially with Fort Lauderdale CF. Start with Noah Allen, USL League One Young Player of the Year last year, a U20 international. Tyler Bagley, who they drafted in the Super Draft this year. Logan Batiste, who is a young right back, 17 years old. You have Romeo Beckham. A name that I just found out about, Schneider Borgelin, who is a Haitian international, has had some Haitian national team caps. Abel Caputo, who we've heard of with Fort Lauderdale, and a lot of these guys are now the Fort Lauderdale ones. Drew Harden, Ethan Harden, Sean Hundahl, Harvey Neville, Modesto Mendez, Braxton Najib, Didon Reyes, David Ruiz, and then lastly, Lawson Sunderland. Your guys' biggest takeaways from the MLS Next Pro announcement, and also throw in there if you like Inter Miami CF2 compared to Fort Lauderdale CF.
So I mean, I don't really care about the name. I liked the Fort Lauderdale name. I wish they could have kept it. Just some quick housekeeping notes, though. The conference, they're in the Central Division, so that's Columbus, Cincinnati, Chicago, Orlando, and Inter Miami too. So all of those minor leagues. 24 home games starting March 26th, ending September 18th. 24 games through 26 weeks. And so they'll have 12 home, 12 away. And then the playoffs will go with the team at the top of your division, followed by, I think it's the best teams with four best points, two best points. Okay. So yeah, so that's right, across divisions. So that's sort of it. Phil talked about it. I asked him about it earlier today, and he mentioned that he liked the USL Pro because he liked how there were non-affiliated teams to the process. That you had your Union Omahas, you had your Tormentas, you had your North Texas team. Like you had those random. Well, North Texas was affiliated with FC Dallas, but you had those off-put teams that those were people that were fighting for MLS contracts. Now it's a little bit more of a minor league system. It's more like baseball with AAA, AA, single A. So it's going to be different. I hope, and we haven't gotten confirmation on this yet, I hope fans get in this year. That's been one of my biggest disappointments, is it can be so valuable for a lot of these guys to get that, even if it's a couple, even if it's like 1,000, 2,000 people, it can be valuable for them to play in front of that environment. They're all playing in their home stadiums. So if they go to Orlando, if they go to Chicago, if they go to Columbus, they're getting that environment, maybe not to the scale that they'll normally see, but they are getting some level of understanding of what it is going to be, and it can only be a benefit to it. Some of the names that you mentioned, I think, are names that I hope get valuable minutes while they are at Inter Miami 2 this year, because that will only help for it when we learned this last year with all of the challenges of calling up players and whether or not they were eligible or whether they could play or not, how much could they play, all of this. Even in our conversation with Darren Powell, however many months back, he talked about how valuable it is to get them those running active game minutes, to not just be in training like some of those guys were before New England at the end of last year, but to actually get game minutes. And that'll be the interesting thing. Like Alex and I have talked about a million times before, a lot of these guys, Darren Powell plays a very exciting brand of soccer. So it's a fun team to watch, and it's if you love soccer in South Florida, it's must see TV.
Totally agree. Before I get to you, Alex, I want to talk about your point that Phil Neville made about it being, the USL being good for those younger guys because they're going against non-affiliated teams and actual clubs and organizations that are, their own thing. Just a little personal thing. I had a high school teammate who was trying to make a name for himself in American soccer. He was in Haitian International, and there is a complete opposite side to this. Yes, it is great for affiliated teams that have young players and are getting the experience against grown professionals and mature adults that are playing in this league. However, when you have, let's say, a 23-year-old who's still trying to play for contracts and is having to go through the USL system, and say they can only get signed to Sporting Kansas City 2. I'm getting a little specific here, but they're playing with a bunch of kids, not necessarily kids, but 17, 18, 19-year-olds who aren't up to their standard in terms of how they play on the field, that can, rupture their style of play, their minutes, and how they look on the field. So there are two, and I'm pretty sure I asked Darren Powell about this too, and he talked about that same thing that Phil was discussing. But there's an opposite side to it, and I think for them to be able to break away the affiliated teams and have USL just grow as a second division in American soccer with, standalone organizations is going to be really good for the growth of soccer in America, because you're not only going to have one division with true professional athletes, but you can now have maybe two or even three divisions with full on only professional / semi-professional athletes who are going to be playing against each other in their fights for their careers, which could be really good.
And to your point, just real fast, right? Like, we all expect Noah Allen, Harvey Neville at times to get minutes with the first team this year. But a move like this to create a league like this can be really positive for a guy like Sean Hundal, who now has the ability and the flexibility to come up and down and not do it with the necessity of signing a first team contract. That could be beneficial for a guy like that we haven't seen in the past.
But here's the thing, too. Sorry, Alex. Sean Hundal is reaching an age where it almost may not be beneficial for Miami to retain him. And if he starts to get, the up and down first and second team minutes, there then can be USL teams looking in to poach him off of a roster as he reaches the 21, 22, 23, 24 years of age to go play full on first team minutes against grown professionals in a standalone organization club kind of league, which would be really good. And I think it's going to start, for a couple years, it's going to start to provide opportunities for players like Sean Hundal across the entire MLS Next Pro. And then in a couple years, you'll see that it is going to be solely academy kids coming up through the ranks. And another point to it is, we've always talked about FC Dallas and Philadelphia and the Red Bulls academies being the prestigious ones in MLS. Miami obviously now getting up there, but with this opportunity for second teams in an MLS Next Pro, the academies are going to be built stronger, more consistently throughout the league, and that's something that the league has not, ever played a part in, and they've now created a system where they can aid that and have, more players come through the ranks in their own systems.
Yeah, and I agree. I think South Florida is such a soccer hotbed. I think having a sort of, basically MLS Next Pro, you can sign. It's the rules are so interesting because they're not signed to the league. They're independent, players per se. So I think, and especially with their ability to go back and forth from the first team, I think I'm just like, I wish this was implemented last season because it would have been really beneficial for Miami. But I think it just helps some of these guys that are good but maybe not ready for first team football. Like you say, Sean Hundal, for instance, he's an absolutely brilliant player, but maybe he needs time to, get some water under his feet to feel the game a bit more, playing in MLS Next Pro with the ability to get called up to the first team back and forth. It won't stunt his growth that we saw last year. Take Sammy Gadiri for instance. He was a starter for Fort Lauderdale CF. He was playing really well, got called up to the first team, barely got any minutes, and he obviously he's not on Inter Miami's roster anymore because he just maybe couldn't stay in form. So it's just this flexibility. It'll just not only just for Inter Miami but for the league. Really, I think it's a step forward into player development, and I think this is what MLS wants. They want to be one of those leagues that export players to some of these bigger European clubs, and a league like MLS Next Pro, it'll just help advance that. So I'm really interested and I'm intrigued, and I know for a guy like Noah Allen per se, he will get first team minutes. No, Neville flat out said he will get called up. So for him to be able to get playing time with regular playing time with Inter Miami 2. I was about to say Fort Lauderdale CF, but for him to get regular playing time with Inter Miami 2 and then still get opportunities to, start in, I don't know, cup games or certain league games, it's just absolutely huge for player development.
Yeah, so MLS Next Pro, I didn't realize how passionate and driven I would be about talking about this, but it's kind of a very, very important thing. And I think we've all realized that in the last couple of minutes. But we're going to flip the script again and go back to our final thing here on the pod this week. Basically, our season preview. And like I said, there was a little game from extra time or a little template from extra time that they posted that I want us to run through because I think it'd be a lot of fun, and it also goes through a lot of different points, and we can explain our points. I did ask Andres, our producer, to fill out one of these forms, and he has. So I'm going to use his as like the base template, and we'll go from there. Not to put you on the spot, Andres, but there you go. So obviously, the club that we are talking about is Inter Miami. You are then asked to figure out where they're going to finish in the regular season, their MVP, their Defender of the Year, the Golden Boot winner, the 2022 under 2022 player of the year for your team, where you'll finish in the playoffs, and then the total trophies your team will win this season. Andres has us finishing in 7th place. The MVP is Gonzalo Higuain. The defender of the year for him is Christopher McVey. The Golden Boot winner, Gonzalo Higuain. 22 player of the under 22 player of the year, Emerson Rodriguez. And playoff finish, he says conference semi-final, and that the team finishes with just a Carolina Challenge Cup this year. So Andres has Inter Miami going all the way to the conference semifinal, not making the conference final or the MLS final, but still farther than I personally had it. I'll run through mine really quick.
You only have to win 2 games to get to the conference semifinal, so
it's true. But when you see where I have them in the playoffs, it's kind of I have them also finishing 7th in the East. I think they're going to sneak in. You're going to see the fight like we saw last year towards the end of the year, where they were on the brink of making the playoffs, and it was only until the second to last game of the season where they just missed out. MVP, I also had Gonzalo Higuain. Defended the year. Instead of Christopher McVey, I had Damian Lowe. Golden Boot winner, I also had Gonzalo Higuain. Under 22 player of the year, I also had Emerson Rodriguez. So a lot of similarities between me and Andres. However, for playoff finish, I had the first round. I have a first round exit. I think they'll sneak into the 7th spot and they'll lose in the first round. And total trophies, I put 0. Now, I forgot about the Carolina Challenge Cup. However, I did state that they will make a decent run in the Open Cup this year. I think that they could have a really good Open Cup run. I don't know if they'll be able to win it, but I'm hoping so. That's like one of my favorite tournaments ever. So it should be a lot of fun to see Inter Miami finally compete in it. But how do your guys' little rankings stack up against myself's and Andres's?
Oh, I can go first. So I have them finishing 7th. I think that's a solid place. It's not too high, not too low. They sneak into the playoffs. Maybe they can go higher depending on if an upper echelon team drops or they have a bad year. But 7th MVP for me is Mota or Yedlin. I think Mota will be absolutely huge. I think he's going to be the guy that makes midfield tick, and he'll pair up well with Gregory. And obviously Yedlin having a right wing back, a right back of his quality is, yeah. We Inter Miami needed him for a long time, so I think he'll probably end up having a good year. Golden Boot Campana, I think Yeah, I will say that I was a little hesitant. Maybe, obviously he wasn't fully fit, but in that Charlotte game where he scored, he definitely convinced me. I think he has a little really good qualities. He can do really well in MLS, and of course, you mentioned earlier he's a guy who can sneak into the Ecuadorian national team. He could be that number 9 for them. He was before, obviously, but it's a World Cup year. He wants to play well, get back in the national team. So I think Campana will, especially with Higuain feeding him, Campana will be able to feast. 22 under 22 player of the year. Emerson, I really liked what I saw from him. He's quick, smart player, technically gifted. I think depending on how Inter Miami lines up, he could be along with maybe an Ariel Lassiter, coming off the bench in the 60th minute, just raising havoc with their speed, pace, a technical ability. So I think Emerson will have a good year. Playoff finish. Maybe I'm being a little bit too uh, under. Yeah, I don't know. I have him in the round of 16, but maybe not making it past that. I don't know. This is just a conservative prediction right now. Maybe they can go farther. I don't know, but right now around the 16, and obviously total trophies. I added in the Carolina Challenge Cup, and Phil Neville said they're going to put it in their trophy cabinet. So that's a trophy. And yeah, I would like to see them make a deep Open Cup run as well. I don't know if it'll happen, but I think for them to just play in this tournament after 2 years of not being able to, I think it's going to be really fun. So
Alex, I need your defender of the year.
Defender of the year. I totally blanked on that. McVay. I really liked from what
Okay,
McVay. I liked what I saw from
interesting.
him. There were like a couple moments in preseason where he pulled he intercepted a ball and he flicked it over the attacking player to dribble into midfield. I don't know if anyone caught that or remembered that, but I was like, oh wow, yeah. Not only is he pretty quick, he's got really good ball skills. So, in previous Inter Miami defenders, they've had good ball skills, but maybe they weren't the quickest. So, McVay, Neville has talked about him how he just puts his head down and it works, and I love players like that. So, definitely my defender of the year, Christopher McVay.
All right, Ian, you're up.
All right. So I think that we're all being kind. I know that this is an Inter Miami podcast. So I'll put them seventh, but the way I basically look at it is there are four lead teams in the East. It's NYCFC, the Revs, Atlanta, and Philadelphia Union. And then there's two bottom teams, going to be Cincinnati and Charlotte. And then there's eight smack dab in the middle. And pick whatever three of those you think are going to make it, and that's basically what it's going to be. So, I guess I'll say seventh, just to be kind for all intents and
I'm
purposes. My
I'm
MVP is
almost
going to be
positive.
Greg.
Sorry, I'm almost positive that decision day is going to make or break Inter Miami's playoffs. Like it's going to go
Right.
down to that point, like 100%. Like I'm almost confident in that it'll be decision day to find out if they get 7th or 6th in the East instead of 8th or 9th.
What
100%. That
I'll
is
say,
what I have in mind.
what I'll say is I'll put a stopgap on the idea 47 points makes the playoffs. You get to 47, you'll be in. So that
And
would be
that's good
where
because
I'll say
last season they were on 41 points, so the 47 is definitely doable, honestly. So,
yeah. So I just think that they're going to be in that sort of gap. So I'll say regular season finish seventh. I think probably more realistically ninth or 10th. But we'll say seventh for all intents and purposes. My MVP is going to be Gregory. I think that he is the lifeblood of this team. And he proves it time and time again. The joy and the passion and the creativity, but also the physicality that he brings is so different than what everybody else brings. My defender of the year is going to be Damian Lowe. I really like his size. I like his ability to organize, and I think that he'll be good. I think McVay is a good shout, but I like Damian Lowe as well. Golden Boot. Since everybody said Higuain, I guess since I'm last, I'll go in different direction and I'll say Campana, but it's probably going to be Higuain. 22 under 22. I was going to say Rivaldo, but since everybody else said Rivaldo, I'll also go in a different direction. And I'll say Quinteros. I'll say Jairo Quinteros. will be my 22 under 22 because he'll get a lot of minutes, and I think that he's a quality player. Playoff finish, if you're anywhere in that bottom, if you're anywhere under those four, you're not going to get past them, especially with the home field advantage that they're going to have. So that would be a first round exit. There's no way that I think if those four that I mentioned earlier don't wind up being the four in the end, maybe Toronto can be improved, maybe. It's still like kind of yet to be seen sort of stuff with them.
But they bought
Um,
Insigne and Carlos Salcedo.
and then total trophies. I would love to see a U.S. Open Cup run like we've talked about. I think that it's something that the organization really wants, that it's very important. It's rare to see the U.S. Open Cup valued as much as Inter Miami values it. So I don't know
Well,
if yeah.
there's something to that though. A U.S. Open, like let's say, okay, this team's not winning the Supporters Shield, they're not winning MLS Cup, and they're not going to be top of the Eastern Conference if the Western Conference team wins Supporters Shield. So how else do you qualify for the CONCACAF Champions League?
And they want to be
It's
in
the
that
U.S. Open
because
Cup,
of the global
and they
leg.
want to be in that. It's a global, exactly. It's a global tournament, and they want to be the team in that. And the way to do that realistically, if we have them at this point in the rankings, is to win a tournament like the U.S. Open Cup to put them back into, for the first time ever into the CONCACAF Champions League.
A cool thing just to note real fast is a team up in West Palm Beach named City Soccer. It's just like a local pub team. They won the local qualifier. They're going to go up on March 23rd is the first round of the U.S. Open Cup. They're going to play Miami United in Hialeah, in that park. I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but that's where Miami United play. The winner plays Miami FC. So we have like a little connection of a pathway to have some fun local soccer connection here.
That's really
no,
cool.
It's not Tropical Park. It's the one named after a president or something like that. I forget what it's called. But yeah. So if they make a cup run, that's fine. I think that the Carolina Challenge Cup, I know that it's like easy to laugh at. I don't really laugh at it. I'm kind of, you got something,
Yeah.
And for a team that's gone through so much, they can't say you never won anything anymore. And so even if that's the only thing they win this year, I think you're okay. Make a decent showing, build off of something. If you can make a playoff run, do it. I don't see them at the level of your New Englands, of your Philadelphias, of your Atlantas, and of your New York City FCs. But I think that this team could be competitive.
So you think
I would.
Oh, sorry,
Go ahead,
Austin. You
Alex.
think they're gonna prioritize U.S. Open Cup? Because I know Neville said they do want to make the playoffs, but winning U.S. Open Cup, that's a trophy. That's a big deal. So you think they're gonna
My
prioritize that?
big, my
I want
big,
them to.
my
Okay.
big question with that is there is such a condensed schedule this year with the World Cup in the winter, and
Yeah.
so there are going to be a lot of games and a lot of days. So I think maybe like midway through the season, when you start getting into May, June, July, where are you in the standings? If you're doing well and can afford a game or two, then you rotate and prioritize Open Cup. If you're doing poorly and you're just way out of it, well, then maybe you prioritize Open Cup. But if you're in the mix and you're gonna have to be in that meet, like I think they are, then maybe you can't prioritize Open Cup because you're gonna need to have starters for the weekend games. Because remember, this year there's only 3 midweek games, right? So it's very weekly based. So it's going to be very regimented. And so you can sort of plan a schedule on this.
Other than well, let me just say this: they have a very favorable first 5 games, other than LAFC, which could get them off to a hot start. However, I hope that, I mean, obviously the answer is, oh, we want to win, we think we can be the best team, yada yada yada. We're always going to hear that, but I would stress, if I was the owners and I'm looking at Phil Neville, I'm saying, look, we need to continue to grow. CONCACAF Champions League, in my opinion, is the way to do that. US Open Cup, whether you're in 4th place or you're in 10th place or you're in 1st place or you're in last place, needs to be on your minds at all times. It's not just a throwaway kind of thing. I'm extremely looking forward to the opportunity that this club has for the first time in their careers to try and win a trophy like that and cement themselves as a CONCACAF opponent to be reckoned with if they make the Champions League.
The thing that I'll say to that is, like, I mentioned that meet in the middle. A rotational squad, there's no reason why a rotational squad shouldn't be competitive with Chicago, who they're not going to have to do a rotational squad with because it's game one. That they couldn't be competitive with Columbus, that they couldn't be competitive with Red Bulls, that they couldn't be competitive with Toronto, that they couldn't be competitive with Orlando, that they couldn't be competitive with DC, and that they couldn't be competitive with Montreal. I lay all that bare at your front door and say, oh, I can rotate a squad through 14. Well, it'll wind up being 14 of the 34 games that they're going to play. So it's the lion's share of the schedule. But if I can get through that, there's no reason that if other teams aren't going to prioritize the Open Cup, why I can't, in order to have a first team squad that can take advantage and maybe pick off some of the other teams that aren't going to take it as seriously.
Especially if Miami ends up managing to get more draws this season, because I think someone made the point where they had the same amount of wins as Nashville. But Nashville drew 4 more games than
Bill
Miami
did it,
did.
and he talks about it all the time.
Yeah, so it's not even rotational squads where where they can win. It's just, hey, can we play for a draw here and just not drop points? So it's a really, really astute observation that you guys made about just rotating the squads and keeping that U.S. Open Cup alive.
Listen, we covered a lot here, guys, and I'm happy to be back. I'm sure you guys are happy to be back, and we will be here weekly as the season is getting ready to kick off on Saturday, 6 p.m. at DRV Stadium against Chicago Fire, or 6:08 and 32 seconds, as Phil Neville said. Cannot wait for that. Hope all of you fans that are listening can get out to the game, and if you can't, at least watching on the TV or on the app, whatever it is. But it was a really good conversation, a lot of dialogue here, more topics than I think that we originally planned for, which is awesome. Yes, Ian?
I have one thing that I have to jump in. Phil, if you made it this far listening to the pod this week, my goal this year is to get him to stop saying the MLS and just get him to say MLS. That's my goal for this year.
All right, we're gonna make it a thing. We're gonna make it a thing. That's a good idea because I noticed that every single time, and I used to be one of those guys, and I've gotten off of it since covering this team starting almost 3 years ago.
Yeah,
now.
isn't that crazy? 3 years. Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Year 3, here we
Let's
are.
go.
But anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in. This has been the Heron Outlet. For Alex Winley, for Ian Hest, I am Austin Robillard. And also for our producer, Andres, we thank you so much, and we will see you back again this time next week.